Today's episode of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, is truly something special. This show has been a return to form for the franchise and a step forward with a new, bigger scale story, getting into the CRM, a lot of lore, a lot of big things happening behind the scenes. But this episode slows things down, and that bigger aspect of the story is put to the side so we can have a character piece about Michonne and Rick together and their relationship. And this episode gave us so many things that us fans are really desperate to see. The conversations that we've wanted to see them have ever since the show started, they really drill that down in this episode. And this really is one of the best episodes I think that Walking Dead has ever had. I think years from now, we will rank this among some of the best of the franchise so far because it is so satisfying. We get a discussion of the arcs that they've been on since they separated. So many references to earlier episodes and early seasons that it really feels like this episode encapsulates their full journey. And it has an ending that is really cathartic and definitely very emotional. And I, for one, I usually finish the episode, I turn the camera on and start going. I had to calm down a little bit before I started filming this because it was definitely that type of experience for me as a fan, having been with these characters for so long. But probably my favorite part of the episode, other than that big cathartic moment at the end, was just all the little references throughout the episode. And it's more than just member berries. Like, it's not just random stuff. So, hey, remember this happened? No, it's not that. It is the culmination of their journey to this point. And I absolutely loved this episode. I think some fans are going to be a little disappointed that the main plot line is kind of put on a back burner so we can have this character episode. But really, I think most fans are here for Walking Dead in the human drama first and foremost. That's what we want to see more than anything. So this episode was definitely necessary, and I loved every second of it. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. We're just going to break into the breakdown here. So at the end of last episode, we had the insane jump out the helicopter moment that was definitely a great cliffhanger, and that leads into this episode perfectly. We're seeing this hotel, and it's nice and pristine, and we've got Roombas rolling around, we got computers, lights, and electricity, and there's a little bit of mystery around what is this place, and we get a little bit into that. That's the one part of the episode I would have liked to see a bit more of that, but it's more hinted at than we actually see. So there's definitely an aspect of like, isn't it very convenient that they happen to jump out right here next to a hotel that happens to have power and all these other things? Maybe, and that's perfectly fine to point that out. But I think that it works for the story in general because they do actually provide an explanation for all these things, and it actually ties into the deeper themes as well. So it's not just random, although it is definitely convenient. But we're here for Rick and Michonne first and foremost, which is why they don't necessarily explain all that stuff up front. The one thing that was a little jarring, they had the scenes from last week at the beginning, the previously, and then they jump out the helicopter, and then they show that scene again. It was like, I don't know why you showed that in the previously if we're just going to show it again. It seems a little redundant, but that's, again, just a very tiny nitpick, really. I just want to point out the song choice here is perfect for this scene where it's about someone coming out of prison and do their loved ones still care for them. It's definitely the perfect metaphor for what's going on between Rick and Michonne in this episode. Worth pointing that out. I love the couple arguments in this episode. I think they really got an organic sounding real couple in this episode. There's so many little moments throughout the episode where they sound like a couple when they argue, and then they tease each other. They have names for each other. Commando, she calls Rick, and they have names for each other, and then you see them working together at the end of the episode. So it really is a couple episode, and it just feels very real and organic, and I think that they really nailed the beats in this episode because it goes through stages, and we're really unpacking this relationship and everything they've been through in this episode. And Rick has been, a lot of fans have detected that there's something off about Rick through this series when he interacts with Michonne. He seems to be keeping his distance, and he seems to almost be afraid, like there's something lingering in the background, and that's the whole point of this episode, is to get to that moment. What is that thing? And then when you get there, it makes perfect sense, and it's satisfying, and it ties in with so many things that the fans are feeling too. So it's a very cathartic thing. And I love this start of the episode where Michonne's kind of being playful almost. They're looking around this very well-equipped hotel area, and, she's pulling books off of the shelves, and she's talking about how, all the things that she wanted to be when she was younger. She wanted to be a writer, she wanted to be a computer engineer, and all this stuff. Talking about her past, I love tying that stuff in there. And then Michonne decides to change, and of course, very nice looking lady, but that main reason we're doing that here is so that we can see the X on the back. This is something that happened after Rick left the show. Daryl and Michonne had this thing, and we unpacked that at the end of the episode, but basically something that they've been through without Rick. Rick sees that, and it almost is like a stunning realization to him that, oh wow, Michonne isn't just this thing in my mind that I remember. It's like she has a real experience outside of me and experienced trauma without me and went through all these things. Like, it is this like realization moment where it becomes real. So I think that was played very well by both sides, and it's like, you don't even need to address that until the end of the episode. We know what they're thinking, And a lot of that, even Rick in this episode, I think a lot of people are going to be frustrated with Rick. He gets to where we want him to go at the end of the episode, but we're feeling the frustration that Michonne is feeling. And that's why it's kind of like a point of view episode from Michonne's perspective. And Denai Guerrera actually wrote the script for this episode. And I'm always a little wary of actors stepping into the writer's room because I'm always thinking that they might put what the actor wants to do before what the audience wants to see. Not here at all. She's totally in tune with what needs to be done from a fan perspective. So, nailed it. Like, I couldn't think of a better writer for this episode, and it's definitely a Michonne episode too. So, I love these conversations here, and like I said, talking about her past, and then she's basically showing how cruel he's been in this show to her, and obviously he has the protector mindset. He's trying to protect his family by sending her off. But that letter that he wrote was really a very cruel thing to do, to lie to her, to trick her into trying to leaving. And honestly, it's kind of disrespectful because he and her are equals. And if he was in her place, there's no way he would have left, right? So it's almost a disrespect to Michonne. It's like he doesn't know her anymore, and that's a lot of this tension between them, is that he should have known. He shouldn't even have attempted to do that because he should have known that she's not going to give up easily. He's also right, and this is why it's good writing, because they are both very understandable perspectives. The size of the CRM, the threat of everything, that they could just drop bombs, basically, chemical warfare, wipe out their entire community in one go with no sweat, is a big enough threat that he feels trapped in this prison, essentially. So, it's very good writing, but definitely there is that lingering aspect where it just doesn't feel completely right. At the beginning, I was like, is it the whole episode going to be this argument? But it goes through stages, and they absolutely, I think, nail it. But you could have condensed it down more, but we wouldn't have had that same catharsis at the end of the episode. So I think it was great to divvy it up like this and do a full episode about it. But I can see why some people might be a little frustrated with this episode. Like, we needed a whole episode to convince Rick where he should have been at the beginning. So I could definitely see that, but that's not how I feel about it at all. So basically they're fighting over this object, and the object is Rick's ticket back to the CRM. It calls a helicopter. It's a geolocator thing. We got this shot of a helicopter crash into the building across the way, and that was a helicopter they're riding in, and Rick says, "You saved us, you saved our lives by throwing us out of the helicopter because it was a very heavy storm." And it also gives them a ticket out of here because everybody's just going to think that they're in the helicopter that crashed and they're just dead. So that is the assumption there. And the helicopter was able to be located, so it definitely has something in there that they can track it. The CRM knew it was there. They saw it wasn't moving, so like, okay, it crashed, and they came in, and they had rockets blow it up, because they of course, blow up every semblance of the CRM that's left over. They don't want anybody seeing their logo or any of that. So I really like this scene here, Michonne talking about Nat and how he said, "I know how it ends," and he was looking into the fire when he said that. So he knows that it's going to end in heartbreak and disaster. And that's not what ends up happening because, of course, spoiler alert, Rick ends up going with her at the end. But I think it's still going to end up coming true because they have to burn the CRM to escape, really. We know that this isn't just they're not going to go home after this. It's going to catch up with them somehow. So, obviously, it's 2 more episodes left of the season. They're not going to get away that easily. And I have a feeling that something big is going to happen at the end of the season, whether one of them dies or, I hate to say it, but it just feels like they need to sacrifice something in order to get home. So, it's not going to be easy getting out of here. But here's some more really great conversations here. Rick was explaining the whole Jada situation and how he needs to stay so that she can go, and he got that out of her, that Michonne can leave, because, Michonne and him together is a threat to her, so it's in her interest to let Michonne go, and all this stuff, and I love this scene as well. And then Michonne gets really frustrated and starts breaking stuff and getting ready to leave, and she storms out, and then she waits here. And there's this really heartbreaking moment where you really think that Rick is not going to run after her. She did that storm out so that he would follow her. It was kind of a bluff, really, but it ended up that at this moment, you think Rick's not going to come after her. And they cut Rick opening the door. I thought that they would have left that ambiguous for a moment until Rick shows up again, but maybe they feel like they've done that too many times. But one reference in this scene that I definitely want to mention is Michonne says, when the prison cell is open, you leave. That's what you do. And that's a reference to 2 moments, at least, in the show up to this point. One is, of course, Negan in the basement. He had the prison cell opened, and he decided to stay because he doesn't want to, live on his own. He wants to become a part of the community, and he felt like that was the first step to it. So it's almost like Rick is in that exact position. And then there's also the moment in the Morgan episode with Eastman where Morgan was in this cell that was never locked, and that became kind of a symbol for his mental health issues. And he could have left at any time, but he chose to stay in. So Rick is in Morgan's place, Rick is in Negan's place, in a way, except instead of Negan being the villain in the jail cell with the good guys, it's the good guy in the jail cell with all the villains. So I love this texture of adding in all these things that have happened up to this point, because we have hundreds of hours practically of episodes of this show, and there's so much to draw from, and they really do it in this episode, and it is definitely satisfying to see all these references. So now we got zombies. Obviously, we need a conflict. We need a ticking clock in Hollywood screenwriting terms. You always want to have a reason things need to happen now. And that's this ticking clock, which is the building could collapse at any moment. Now, it's very convenient that it only happens in intervals, but, that's how stories work, right? We need a reason for Rick to go out right now. Although, there's a question of if Rick left because of the helicopter coming. I think that's why they had the shot of Rick opening the door, is that they didn't want us to think that Rick only came to save her because of the explosion. They wanted to show Rick leaving because she left. So that, I think, was ended up being smart writing, even though, we could have had the Deus Ex Machina thing that they always do, but they didn't want to do that. So I respect that. And here we see them working together. Michonne left her knife behind, and I was like, how could you leave that? But I love these scenes. It's fun to have, interspersed with this conversations. They have to work together to fight zombies and survive the situation. And it's quintessential Walking Dead to do that. And here we got a little bit of backstory about this place, that somebody was trying to start a fresh new world, and they're innovating and they have self-sustained power grid and all this stuff. There's a mystery about where they got their food. They had crops somewhere, presumably, but they didn't see them. So there's a lot of open questions about this, and it's something you could speculate on, but eventually it ended up going badly. And Michonne uses this to say, look, you're trying to change the world, you're trying to change the CRM, but it's not going to end up well for you, just as an example. And there's so many examples in this show of that happening. But Rick feels like he has an opportunity to change the world for the better because, he can't really destroy the CRM on his own, but he can influence it. And he brings up Okafor and how he has had this vision of changing the CRM from the inside. And Michonne's like, that's not your responsibility. That's not on you. But Rick feels like it is because it's future generations he's talking about. And I forgot to mention the RJ conversation. We wanted the RJ conversation in episode 2. Like, immediately we wanted to talk about RJ because Rick doesn't actually know that Michonne was pregnant when he left. And that was so satisfying to see that realization. But Rick, keeps his distance. He's like, I don't want to know about RJ because that's another complication. And what happens at the end of the episode, the catharsis at the end, that he can't lose them again. And that would make that worse. So he doesn't even want to know. And, it's kind of understandable that since he's trying to drive them apart because he wants to follow his mission and do the right thing and protect his people, it's better if he doesn't know, and in his mind. So, just really well written, well acted, and everything. And I love seeing, Rick pace around the room. We get a little bit of that old Rick dad energy, and he talks about how he's not the brave man that Michonne told him RJ calls him the brave man and about all that. That's another reference to the past, and I just love seeing that come back. And that Rick feels like he can't live up to that. It's not him saying that he is the brave man by doing this. It's like a cowardly thing that he's doing, but he is trying to fight. It's like these contradictory things working together. And here's a fun part where they both stab the same zombie and they're arguing about it. Like, I had it. And then Rick splatters the blood on her face. Really funny. Really good. You got to inject some humor in there. And here we got a scene where the chandelier that we saw in the hallway, or the stairwell here, collapses in, and Michonne is pinned. And this is a very key scene. Another reference, a reference to the first episode. Obviously, Rick in the hospital. It was dark. He had a lighter, or a match, I think it was, and he lit up the darkness with that. And they show that here too. I do think it's a reference. I don't think it's just a coincidence. I really do think it's intentional. And we're in this stairwell, and basically Michonne kind of proves to Rick why he's wrong through this scene, because she says, you should go, save yourself. And that's kind of what he's doing to her earlier in the season. And she's like, of course you wouldn't leave, because you're not just going to let me die like that. And same thing with Michonne. She's not going to leave Rick after all that. So this is a very key moment, I think, that it was a fun action moment too. We had them working together. Rick's trying to take apart the chandelier, and then he takes turns to kill the zombies. We have Michonne on the ground stabbing upward, and I'm definitely skeptical if she would actually have the upper body. Not like Michonne's obviously very strong, but just the positioning of that. Would you be able to get the actual momentum you need, like anybody, to actually go through the skull like that? It's an open question, but it was fun to see the shush kebab zombies that were on the pole together. That was fun. And they tripped the zombie onto the chandelier and stabbed them that way. They made good use of the set piece. So that's always fun to see. Good action, solid action. And then we kind of run off, and it's like, okay, we're not getting collapsed over here, so we can have a moment. And it just kind of, it feels arbitrary. It's important for the characters and all that, but I'm just like, very convenient. And then they decide they're going to bang, because working together, that's what turns them on, and treating each other as equals and working together to survive is what brought them together. So it makes sense here. And you could see the fear in Rick's face during this. He's like, letting himself do this is a big step for him. So you get to see that moment, and the music swells up, and it's a big moment. It is kind of funny because I'm just lingering in the back of my mind like, this isn't really the best time for this, but it's definitely a great moment here. And now they've broken the ice. Rick's asking about RJ, and they're talking about how he looks. And it's Rick's kind heart that reminds Michonne of him the most. So a very good scene here. And another big part of the scene is Michonne acknowledging Rick's lost hand, that he did this so he could escape. And we've talked about that earlier in this episode. But in this scene, Michonne sees that and she says, I'm sorry that they did this to you. Of course, another reference to the pilot episode of the show, what Rick said to the bicycle girl, the zombie, before he shot her, giving that humanity to the zombie. And then Rick says later in the scene that he learned how to live and also die by killing the dream that he has of Denai and Carl, that dream of a family together. He had to kill that, so he killed himself in that way, became somebody else. And just that symbol of him being the Walking Dead, it's definitely on the nose, but it's so good, so powerful, and such a great reference. Again, just really rich stuff, and it goes to show how amazing that pilot episode is, that we can continue throughout this season, just continue to draw from that episode and keep referencing it here, and it continues to have that power. So really, really great reference there. And then the collapsing catches up to them, and Michonne's like, we have to decide right now, are we leaving together or are you going back? And that extra pressure of the outside makes it more real. Now, if I was Rick and I was still going to go back, I would just, in this moment, she can tell when he's lying, right? That's one of the themes throughout this episode. But part of me is like, okay, yeah, I'll go with you. Let's just get out of here to save her, right? But he breaks through that, whereas he's been lying to her throughout the season so far. He actually does reveal the truth here, and this is the catharsis that I was talking about. And we get into, like, what is the real reason? Yes, you have very good reasons as to why you want to stay, to protect us, to change the CRM, to save the world. That's not the real reason. What is the real reason? And the real reason is that Rick, his strength was found in his memories of Carl and stuff. And I got to speed through this part because I'm probably going to get emotional if I talk about it too much. But just seeing the flashbacks of Carl, and like he had dreams of Carl, and that kept him going. And then he had dreams of Michonne, and the CRM took those away from him because he had to let that dream die. We saw that in the first episode. We saw the dreams in the first episode. And a lot of people might have questioned why those dream scenes were necessary. I saw a lot of people saying they could have done without that. You needed that for this. Like, it would not have done the same. It wouldn't have, like, that's why it's hard to judge a full season based on one single episode taken out of context, because there's a lot more going on than just one episode, right? And just seeing the full breakthrough, Rick's been very stoic throughout this episode and most of the season, other than, when he was contemplating self-deletion, right? So he's been stoic, and seeing the actual mask fall off and the brave man go away and the real Rick come out, it was really powerful to see. And the flashbacks, usually I don't like seeing the flashbacks because we don't need it. In this case, it was really necessary, I think, to really get the emotions across. And Michonne has the phone with Carl's face on it. And that's just the show acknowledging how big of a loss Carl really is. And even though we had that episode where we kind of mourned him in season 8, it didn't feel like it was complete, that story. And, if I could wave a magic wand, that would be the one thing in Walking Dead I would change, right? Bring back Carl, don't kill him off. But with that in the story, addressing it here, making it real again, and I think Rick even says, or Michonne says, we're real. This dream you have, it's a what if. What if I can change the world? What if they come after me? What if? That's all hypothetical, what's real is the family, and I thought that was really beautiful. And here they're working together and not arguing, and they're making out in the elevator, and we see the geolocator thing destroyed. He leaves it behind, and they're driving off in a very conveniently placed car that happens to have ethanol in it. And I love the stick shift moment, and we see the Roomba, in the destroyed room. I love the moment when Rick was like, "What is that? What the hell is that?" Because Roombas were pretty new in 2010, right? So you might not have heard of it. And I love this moment in the car where they have to switch places and they're making out and all that. It's a lot of fun. And then Rick repeats something Michonne said, that they can do anything together. I forget exactly what it was, but wow, just a beautiful, beautiful episode, man. And little nitpicks that don't matter are all that I have critical to say, because none of that really matters, because what I'm gonna remember is how it made me feel. What I'm gonna remember is what it did for the character arcs. These little things along the way don't really matter, but it's fun to point them out because this is what we're here for on YouTube. We talk about that type of thing. It's fun to nitpick, but really, they nailed it with this. Denai Guerrera, awesome. Andy and Denai acting, amazing. Michael Slovis, killing it on the directing, as always. So this was just phenomenal, and I'm blown away. And I'm really excited for the last 2 episodes. But with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.